Hello, welcome to my channel WWE Pulse.
Hey everybody! Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be talking about why wrestling appeals to so many generations. This might seem like a strange topic for a wrestling channel, but I promise you there's some real merit to this idea. Wrestling has been around for a long time and has appealed to many different age groups over the decades. And I think that's something that we should celebrate. There are lots of ways to look at this topic, but here are three aspects of pro wrestling that I believe contribute to its generational appeal. No one. Fans who grew up watching in the 80s now watch with their kids. This is kind of an obvious one, but it's important. There's a lot of parents who watched wrestling when they were young and now they're sharing that experience with their kids. If your dad or mom was a wrestling fan, then chances are you were exposed to wrestling at a very early age. I know this sounds like anecdotal evidence, but it's really not. It's just me noticing that at pretty much every live event I go to, I see a lot of families with young kids. Sometimes it's just a parent and one kid. Sometimes it's a grandparent, a parent, and two kids. Sometimes it's a whole gang of them. You'll also notice that wrestling tends to start off slower, so to speak, with the opening matches on the card featuring less intense competitors that are more family-friendly. And then, as the night goes on, things gradually get more intense. If you have kids, you know what it's like to try and find entertainment that you and your kids can enjoy together. Believe me, it's not easy. We've all sat through Disney movies that we didn't enjoy, and we've all pretended to be interested in whatever random show our kid is obsessed with at the time. But wrestling seems to work because there's something there for everybody. When my son is old enough to watch wrestling, I want him to share that experience with me. I want to pass the torch, so to speak. And I think it's important to start at a young age. That's how I grew up. My dad took me to my first match when I was 5 years old, and I was hooked immediately. There was just something about it that sparked my interest and got me excited, even though I had no idea what was going on half the time. All I knew was that these guys were athletic, larger-than-life performers, and they could fly. To this day, my earliest memories of sitting in the balcony at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto watching Rick Steamboat wrestle. I was mesmerized by his aerial maneuvers, and I remember thinking, I want to do that. Of course, I never became a wrestler, but that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is that if you introduce your kids to wrestling at a young age, they may just grow up to become fans. And that's how the cycle continues. But the second thing that makes wrestling appealing to multiple generations is that it constantly evolves, which creates new entry points for new audiences. Professional wrestling changes all the time. The way the product is presented, the types of wrestlers that are pushed, the storylines themselves, it's always changing. Some people prefer the wrestling of the past, and some people prefer the modern product. But one thing remains constant, which is that wrestling always moves forward. It doesn't ever stay still. It's almost like wrestling is destined to appeal to multiple generations because it's constantly reinventing itself. This might sound like I'm referring to the various eras of wrestling, such as the territories, the 80s, the 90s, the ruthless aggression era, the PG era, etc. But I don't really mean that. Sure, those are all examples of the product changing, but I'm talking about how wrestling changes on a daily basis. WWE in particular is known for having a very short attention span. When it comes to pushing certain wrestlers or storylines, in fact, it seems like they have less patience now than they did in the past. But the fact is that things don't stay the same for very long. So if you would tune in today and decide that you don't like what you see, well, you can just check back in a few weeks or a few months and things will be different. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the way that wrestling works. There's no other form of entertainment that I can think of that changes as rapidly as professional wrestling. Even sitcoms that air new episodes throughout the year tend to keep the same characters and the same basic premise from season to season. But wrestling throws all of that out the window. Every week, wrestlers debut, feuds end, titles change hands, new rivalries are formed, and before you know it, the entire landscape of the industry is transformed. This means that if you were to miss a few weeks of television, you wouldn't be totally lost. If you were to tune back in, you would still be able to follow the storylines and care about the characters, but you'd feel like you were discovering something new. Finally, wrestling has been around long enough to create powerful feelings of nostalgia. Whenever people talk about the golden days of wrestling, whenever someone brings up their favorite wrestler from the past, there's always a sense of longing, a sense of wishing that things could go back to the way they were. But the truth is that we can't ever go back. The present moment is all we have. And that's why the present has to move forward. It has to evolve. It has to change. This is why I don't believe that we'll ever see the return of something called the golden era of wrestling. Golden eras only exist in our memories. They only exist in our imaginations. If you were to bring back Hulk Hogan in 2023, he wouldn't be the same character that he was in the 80s. He'd be a completely different person. And that's not meant to be disrespectful. It's just the way that life works. People and circumstances change. Everything changes. No matter how badly we might want things to go back to the way they were, we can't. The only thing we can do is move forward. And I think that professional wrestling understands that better than any other form of entertainment. Like I said earlier, wrestling is constantly changing. It's always moving forward. And that's why it's able to appeal to so many different generations. It has a long enough history to create powerful feelings of nostalgia. But it's also constantly evolving to create new entry points for new audiences. Those are my thoughts on why wrestling appeals to so many different generations. Wrestling fans, what are your thoughts? Why do you think wrestling appeals to so many different generations? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share it with a friend. Follow me on social media and check out my podcast. Thanks for watching.
Okay guys, thank you for watching my videos.